Blue Like Jazz was a book that I read in the middle of a really difficult time for me, spiritually and relationally. There weren't a lot of Christians around. I was on tour, and I didn't have a lot of, I never went to church, and it was just hard to sort through some things. And a lot of times when I would go to church, I felt like it didn't really relate to what we were going through out on the road. And it reminds me of a time when I went to Afghanistan and we played for the troops there. And the troops that were on the base, they had to be clean cut, they had to use certain language, they had to have their uniforms just right, and they couldn't like cut up and joke, and in that way they had to be professional. And then we played a show for the troops there at the base, and then coming back from warfare, from being in the field, there were two guys that came back that missed the show that were fans of Flyleaf. And when they got there, they had their sleeves rolled up, they had their hat turned around backwards, they were joking, and they had even their beards were grown in a little bit, because these guys had a different requirement of them, because they were out in war every day, facing death and risking their lives. And so I think when we are called to go out in a sense and be in spiritual warfare, which is what we were when we were in Flyleaf, I think that what we need is a little bit different from what the everyday, go home, go to work, go home, and then go to church on Sunday, go to church on Wednesday or whatever. You need a little bit of a different message. And this part I'm going to read to you is page 46, and he's telling the story of someone's testimony as she told it to him. So the part I'm going to read to you is page 46, and it's when a girl is telling him, the writer, the story of how she became a Christian. And she said, "Nadine and I would sit for hours in her room," she began. "Mostly we would talk about boys or school, but always by the end of it we talked about God. The thing I loved most about Nadine was that I never felt like she was selling me anything. She would talk about God as if she knew him, as if she had talked to him on the phone that day. She was never ashamed, which is the thing with some Christians that I encountered. They felt like they had to sell God as if he were a soap or a vacuum cleaner. And it's like they weren't really listening to me. They didn't care. They just wanted me to buy their product. I came to realize that I had judged all Christians on the personalities of a few. That was frightening for me too, because it had been just so easy to dismiss Christians as nuts. But here was Nadine. I didn't have a category for her. To Nadine, God was a being with which she interacted, and even more, Don, Nadine believed that God liked her. I thought that was beautiful, and more than that, her faith was a spiritual thing that produced a humanitarianism that was convicting. I was really freaked out because I wanted to be good, but I wasn't good. I was selfish. And Nadine, well, she was pretty good. I mean, she wasn't selfish. So she asked me if I wanted to read through the book of Matthew with her. And in fact, I did. I wanted to see if this whole Jesus thing was real. I still had serious issues with Jesus, though, only because I associated him with Christianity. And there was no way I would ever call myself a Christian. But I figured I should see for myself. So I told her yes. "So then you started reading the Bible?" I asked. "Yes, we would eat chocolates and smoke cigarettes and read the Bible. Eating chocolates is the only way to do it, if you ask me. The Bible goes so good with chocolate." I always thought the Bible was more of a salad thing, but it isn't. It's a chocolate thing. We started reading through Matthew, and I thought it was all very interesting, I found Jesus very disturbing and straightforward. He wasn't diplomatic, and yet I felt like if I met him, he would really like me. Don, I can't explain how freeing that was, to realize that if I was to meet Jesus, he would like me. I never felt that about some Christians on the radio. I always thought if I met those people, they would yell at me. But it wasn't like that with Jesus. There were people he loved and people he got really mad at, and I kept identifying with the people he loved, which was really good because they were all the broken people, the kind of people who are tired of life and want to be done with it. Or they are the desperate people, people who are outcasts or pagans. There were others, regular people, but he didn't play favorites at all, which is miraculous in itself. That fact alone may have been the most supernatural thing he did. He didn't show partiality, which every human does. I never thought of it that way, I told her. He didn't show partiality at all, Don, and neither should we. But listen, this is the best part. We got to the part of the book where Jesus started talking about soil. Soil? Yeah, there's this part in Matthew where Jesus talks about soil, and he's going to throw some seeds on the soil, and some of the seed is going to grow because the soil is good, and some of the seed isn't because it fell on rock or the soil wasn't good. And when I heard that, Don, everything in me leaped up, and I wanted so bad to be the good soil. That is all I wanted, to be the good soil. I was like, Jesus, please let me be the good soil. So that's when you became a Christian? No, that was later. So what happened next, I asked? Well, later that month, it was December, there was a raging party going on downstairs in the dorm. And I was pretty drunk and high, you know. I wasn't feeling too well, so I started up the stairs to see if my friend Naomi was in her room, and she wasn't, so I went down to my room and sort of crashed on the floor. I just sort of lay there for a little while, and then it happened. Now you have to promise to believe me. Promise what? Penny stopped walking and put her hands in her coat pockets. Okay, but I'm not crazy. She took a deep breath. I heard God speak to me. Speak to you? I questioned. Yes. What did he say? He said, Penny, I have a better life for you, not only now, but forever. When Penny said this, she put her hand over her mouth as if it would stop her from crying. Really? I said. God said that to you? Yes. Penny thought through her hand. Do you believe me? I guess. It doesn't matter whether you believe me or not. Penny started walking again. That is what happened, Don. It was crazy. God said it. I got really freaked out about it, you know, and I thought maybe it was the drugs, but I knew at the same time it wasn't the drugs. Penny put her hand on her forehead and smiled, shaking her head. I should read my journal to you from that night. It was like, oh my God, God talked to me. I'm having this trippy God thing right now. God is talking to me. I kept asking him to say it again, but he wouldn't. I guess that's because I heard him the first time, you know. So is that when you became a Christian, the night God talked to you? No. You didn't become a Christian even after God talked to you? No. Why? I was drunk and high, Don. You should be sober when you make important decisions. Well, that's a good point, I agreed. But I still thought she was crazy. So what happened next? Penny started. A couple nights later, I got on my knees and said I didn't want to be like this anymore. I wanted to be good, you know. I wanted God to help me care about other people because that's all I wanted to do. But I wasn't any good at it. And I had already come to believe that Jesus was who he said he was and that Jesus was God. I don't know how I came to that conclusion. It wasn't like doing math. It was something entirely different, but I knew it. I knew inside that he was God. But this time, I just prayed and asked God to forgive me. And that is when I became a Christian. It's pretty simple. Penny put her hands in her pockets and looked at me with her gorgeous blue eyes. There, she said, are you happy? And with that last comment, she stuck her tongue out and laughed. So it just felt very real, like you're there and you're talking to a real person that has a real story. And it just felt like so many of the conversations that I had had on tour, and that's why I like this book. So it's Blue Like Jazz by Donal Miller.